Bom dia a todos e a todas.
Good morning,
Estão me
everyone.
escutando bem?
Can you hear me well?
Sejam muito bem-vindos.
Welcome.
Muito prazer. Sou o André
It's a great
Mascarenhas,
pleasure to be here. I am André Mascarenhas. I'm the Financial Director for
e vou
Private
estar tendo o
Capital,
privilégio de
and I
falar
have
com
the
vocês
privilege of offering you
Oliver Wyman hoje.
information and introducing Oliver Wyman to
Compartilhar com
you.
vocês
I am going to share with
um
you a
recorte que a
bit
gente fez de uma
of
pesquisa
what we
com
did
as MEIs,
during a
micro
research
e pequenas e
with
médias empresas no Brasil em
MSMEs
relação às suas
in Brazil
necessidades financeiras.
regarding their financial needs.
Mas antes de entrar nos insights, eu queria
But
contar
first,
para vocês hoje,
I would like
rapidamente,
to tell
o
you
que que nos
quickly
motivou
about the
a fazer essa
motivation we had
pesquisa
to
e qual
actually
tipo de
carry out
atitude a
that
gente
type of
empreendeu.
research and the methodology we used.
A partir das fontes públicas, como
As of
Sebrae,
certain
Sebrae,
public
que é
actions
quem
from several places, such as
desempenha
Sebrae, it's evident
a
that
economia, qual é o
MSMEs are
pilar
the
hoje
engine
da
of our
geração de
economy,
empregos no
and they
Brasil.
play an important role when
Em
creating
2024,
jobs.
segundo os
In
dados públicos,
2024, according to public
o
data,
Brasil possuía mais de
Brazil had
21 milhões
more than
de
21
MPMEs
million
e quase
MSMEs, and
97%
nearly
das empresas
97%
ativas
of
dependem
active
desse setor.
companies belong to that
Segundo o
sector.
Sebrae,
According to Sebrae,
esse tipo de empresa
that type of
representou
company represented
26,5% do PIB em
26.5% of
2024
the
e foram responsáveis pela
GDP
criação
in
de mais de
2024, and they
70%
were
de novos
responsible
empregos
for
formais
creating more than
em um
70%
setor que está em
of
constante evolução.
registered
Só em
work. And it's
2024, mais de
continuously
3
evolving. In
milhões de metros
2024, more than
trabalhados.
3 million MSMEs were created.
E para compreender as
And in
necessidades
order to
financeiras
understand the
que esse nicho de
financial
cliente
needs that
possui
that client
com relação
segment
aos serviços
requires
financeiros
regarding
realizados,
financial services
a
currently,
gente coletou
we
perspectivas através
collected
de uma pesquisa
perspectives
online
through
com
an
a maioria dos
online
tomadores
research
de
or
decisão desse
poll
tipo de
with
empresa.
decision makers
E para
from different
complementar as nossas
companies.
visões,
And in
nós
order to
também
complement
conversamos com
our vision,
representantes
we
dessas
also talked to
associações, como por exemplo o
representatives of
Sebrae.
those
E
associations
na
such as
pesquisa a gente
SEBRAE.
tentou trazer
And in the
variabilidade
research, we were working
do
with
setor que esses
their
clientes
ability,
atuam e
size,
até o uso de
the
instituições
sector or
financeiras
where they
dessas
operate, and
instituições.
also the financial use of those companies.
Entrando um pouco nos resultados do
Now,
levantamento,
delving into
a
the
gente observa
results of
como
the
os
poll,
avanços
we
tecnológicos
notice how
têm
technological
transformado a
advances have
relação
been
das
transforming
MPMEs
the
com as
relationships of
instituições financeiras.
MSMEs with
E aqui no
financial
lado ele
institutions. And
representa
here,
como as
I'm
siglas
going to use
representam as
the
MEIs, micro e pequenas e
MSMEs
médias
as the
empresas
acronym to
e
represent
as
all those
relacionadas
companies,
a instituições
and that's
financeiras.
going to be connected to financial
Quando a gente observa
institutions.
como o PIX vem
When we
crescendo em
see how the
participação nos
instant
investimentos
payment is
públicos,
growing in Brazil, the
quando a gente está
PIX
quase
called PIX, that
40% já das
represented nearly
transações eletrônicas em
44% of
2023,
electronic transactions in
segundo os resultados da nossa
2023.
pesquisa,
And according to
quase
the results of our poll,
90%
nearly
das
90%
MPMEs
of
usam esse tipo de pagamento.
MSMEs use this instant payment to receive payments.
Nesse contexto de
Within
crescimento
that
das transações
context, where
eletrônicas
we
no
see
país,
the growth of
a gente
electronic
observa que esses
transactions in Brazil,
empreendimentos,
we see
em
that
mais
that
de
type of
80%
client,
dos casos,
in more than
usam
80% of
aplicativos
cases, use
que tenham interações
service channels that
personalizadas,
have a personalized
aproximadamente
interaction.
50%
Nearly
querem
50%
ter
of
uma plataforma
MSMEs want a
fácil de usar
platform
e com
that's
interações
easy to
amigáveis.
use and with
E
a
mais de
friendly
40%
interface. And more
apontam
than
preocupação
40%
com a
say
segurança
they
e
are
proteção dos seus
concerned with
dados.
security and the protection of their financial data.
Quando a gente questiona elas
When we ask
sobre
them
o uso de contas
about the
bancárias,
use of
mais de
bank accounts,
40% das
more than
empresas
80% of
mantêm um
companies
relacionamento na
responded that
mesma
they keep
instituição
a
financeira que
relationship in the
usa a
same
sua
bank
física.
institution that they use for their
E na média,
individual bank accounts.
independente do setor
In average,
e de
regardless
momento,
of the sector or the
elas têm de
size,
2 a
they
3
have
contas
2
em
to
média.
3 bank accounts in
Enquanto que nas
average.
pequenas e nas médias
And for
empresas, de 1 a 3
MSMEs,
contas.
that is nearly 3
E
bank
todo
accounts.
mês, o uso da mesma
Every month,
conta
the use of the same account that they use
passa de
as
40%,
individuals
que é um
goes
fenômeno que a
beyond
gente também observa
40%, which is a
nas empresas
phenomenon we see
jovens que têm
for
menos de 1 ano.
younger companies with less than
E esse
1 year of
movimento
having
parece ter
opened or
começado
having
a
been created. And
gerar
it's
uma
worth
fidelização
noting
desse
this
cliente
because we
com uma
have
certa
here
fidelidade
a
com as
customer
instituições
profile that
financeiras.
has a certain loyalty with the banks they are
Através
used
dessa
to working with.
pesquisa, a
So when we
perspectiva
see that from the
financeira
profile
do
of the
cliente
financial
hoje,
institution standpoint,
considerando tanto onde ele
by
tem conta
considering
quanto
where
a
they have a bank account
principalidade,
as well as the
o termo
principality. And
principalidade
here the idea of
é de acordo com o
principality
que
is
o cliente
according
considera como
to
instituição
what the
principal.
client considers
Nós já
as the
podemos
main
observar como
institution.
os bancos
We
assim,
notice
eles detêm hoje
that
um
banks
nível de
hold
presença de pelo
more
menos acima de
or
50%
higher
em
levels of
todas as
presence in
cotas de
accounts, which is
empresas.
above
Isso
50%
está quase
in all
90%
types of companies,
já
reaching
nas empresas.
90% in average
E
for
também é importante
MSMEs.
notar
And it's
como
also
eles são
worth
capazes de
noting
capturar
how they
a
are
principalidade, em
capable
especial nas
of
empresas de
amassing or considering this principality for medium-sized companies. On the other hand, digital companies are actually at the spearhead. For medium and medium-sized, they have the principality going beyond 40% and beyond 30% of for micro companies. The interesting thing here is that for smaller segments also, the acquirers are also playing an important role when capturing not only the accounts but also the principality. And when we notice that from the age standpoint of companies, we see how younger companies are also using digital banks, nearly 50% of them having their principality in that type of financial institution, and how bigger companies and the older companies eventually adopt in 70% of cases a S1 type of bank as their main institution. When we go in depth into that principality in the four different types of products and financial services that banks offer, we see the daily movement, credit operations, investment, and other services such as payment, etc. We noticed how S1 types of institutions in the black dots there in the middle of the graph, they are relevant, but they also have a significant dispersion, and that varies from 40 to 60% depending on the type of service they offer. It's interesting to note how some digital banks in clear blue dots and some cooperatives in green dots are also being capable of capturing that high principality, and that reaches nearly 50%. Also, something interesting that we need to note here on the right side is loyalty again. The sector eventually has. When we ask them regarding daily bank movements or transactions, what was the financial institution that you, MSME, had the previous year? More than 97% of respondents said that they had the same institution as the previous year. And that loyalty is maintained when we look at other products and services. So 90% of respondents have a main financial institution for credit, which is the same they use for daily transactions. 83% have as main investment the same institution for daily transactions, and 79% of responders also use them for other services. However, it's important to note that MSMEs are a diverse type of audience with diverse needs depending on the operations, their size, and their maturity. And servicing those clients is challenging because there's no one-size-fits-all type of solution. That's becomes evident when we look at the main needs closely that MSMEs say they have. In average, 38% of them say that they require capital. When we go in depth into that vision, that is a more necessary product for younger and older companies that say that 50% is their main need, compared to 30 and 22% for more mature companies and medium-sized companies. That continues to be true if we see that from the sector standpoint. So by using the CAPEX for investment here as a base, when we go in depth into that, 61% of the agricultural sector say that they require that type of product or financial service. However, on professional needs, only 30% consider that as their main necessity. Now, when we zoom in into that credit universe, we see that more than 30% of MSMEs use a credit product. And we highlight for receivables, rotational credit lines, and financing with a certain guarantee or warranty. And if we look closer at that, we see that younger companies end up having less credit products that they hire. And that's 83% for companies with less than a year of having been created. When we look at the size, we also see that relevance between the discrepancy they eventually have. And the penetration, according to the sector, also varies in a relevant way, and we highlight 84% of companies from the agricultural sector having already some type of credit. When we look at investments, Differently from our initial hypothesis, more than 75% of MSMEs say that they have certain resources invested, whether in savings or CDB, which were the ones they mentioned the most. Herein, we also see the discrepancy when we analyze that according to the size of the company. And it's important to highlight here that that segment of entrepreneurs mix their financial lives with their legal entities. And although that's directed to the investments of their companies, we still see those types of results. Regarding other services, and here we consider the machine, the emission of payment slips, insurances, and other fiscal services as a base, such as the payment of taxes. We notice that 85% of those companies say that they hire some type of service. But we see significant nuances regarding of the lenses we use to evaluate those companies. Nearly over all of those trade companies, they use a machine. And only 50% more or less of those for professional activities actually have that product. When we look at insurance, 75% of MSMEs that work with technology already hire some type of insurance. And when we look at medium-sized companies, nearly 75% of them already use a product such as a corporate credit card or a service to issue payment slips. Now, when considering this context of high penetration for services and financial products for that segment and clients, we ask them regarding the proneness they would have to change the financial institution to these other services. From the standpoint of the main account, we see that 83% of respondents have a high or low proneness to change the institution, while 75% consider changing the main bank for credit and 38% of the main one for credit and investment. When we look at the reasons companies offered for that change, we noted that economic factors are actually the ones that stand out, with an emphasis for interest rates, more limits, better payment conditions, and here in investments, better profitability for their investment. And let's point out that although in recent history the MSMEs were not that loyal, that scenario can change if more attractive offers and a reduced cost of change may be offered to them. Next, and beyond the economic characteristics, we have the vision that clients shared with us regarding an open question. So here we ask them, what can financial institutions do to help your company grow and eventually help you reach your goals? And it was interesting to note how clients say that they look for better experiences in their services, whether through the desire of having one single platform that will facilitate managing their finances or the use of tools to have more agility in their service. And also, we highlight here how they start mentioning that customized human service that understands the needs of this segment becomes actually relevant. And the last idea becomes evident when we analyze the expectation those clients have regarding the use of customer service channels. Herein, customers highlight the availability and convenience of those channels, such as having a 24/7 availability in customer service channels, convenience and commodity of having the entire relationship in one single place. But it also is important how those companies also value human service, such as customized customer service, and the use of branches still becomes relevant. When we delve into that topic, human customer service, and going to a branch, we see that the bigger the size of the company, they do that more often. And that is more than 50% for small and medium-sized companies, and they go at least once to a branch personally. And the main reason is actually being able to talk to their manager, to their account manager. So that states clearly the following. There's still a small relevant part of clients that actually value that type of interaction. In that scenario, we see opportunities for financial institutions and any type of company that can actually serve that type of institution in order for them to evolve in their strategy, in order to capture and retain the different types of medium and small-sized companies in Brazil. It becomes important for financial institutions to invest not just in attracting those clients, but also understanding the nuances they have regarding the needs of the specific segment in which they want to invest to attract their client base. Capturing that audience since the beginning of the journey is key because it's a segment that demonstrates relevant loyalty regarding the main institution, and as of that main account, they adopt several services and financial services, and they eventually use them as their main services. Overall, and even in recent history, that loyalty is relevant. Nothing guarantees that that's going to be or that's going to remain when, especially when we look at the potential of change and what would make them change the financial institution. So, I leave you with this key message. There is no one-size-fits-all solution for all MSMEs because they all have different expectations regarding their products and financial services. They value the perception of an economic advantage in products and services they consume, and they expect to have an incredible experience, sometimes even a human experience. And they look for that convenience both in digital channels and also when they visit the branches. I thank you all for your attention. We are at your disposal for further information. As I said, these were just a few ideas we wanted to present to you today, and we'll be in our stand in the opposite side of the pavilion in front of Workshop C. Well, just feel free to send me a WhatsApp message so we can talk and actually offer you details about any type of topic. Thanks a lot for your attention.